good afternoon. It's Wednesday, November the 16th, 2022, and we are at the Bytown Fire Brigade at 2880 Old Sheffield Road in Ottawa. And today we're going to be having a chat with Reverend Canon John Bridges, and he is the chaplain for the Ottawa Fire Department.
Traditionally, I was considered, when I was hired, the non-Roman Catholic chaplain. So at one point they called it Protestant, but they haven't replaced the chaplain for the Roman Catholics since Len Lonnie passed away.
Okay,
so,
and how long ago was that?
I think Len passed about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago.
Okay, so you're basically available.
The chaplain.
The chaplain, available for anybody who requires. Can you describe what kind of services and support you provide?
Well, the ones that are all written down and understood, or the ones that are really...
Let's start with the official ones and go from there.
Most of my official duties are to preside at special functions. So in the last few months, I've been at the International Firefighters Association Grand Gathering in downtown Ottawa for 2 of the morning sessions to offer up prayers and well-being for the work that they were doing. The Canadian Fire Chiefs Conference was in Ottawa, and I got an invite to come and have a chat with them. And of course, there's always the things like the reunion dinners, and Help Santa Claus Toy Parade. So normally it's the official stuff where they want the face and the name. We
even had the honor of you presiding over our fireworks charity dinner auction.
I had a ball that night, yeah.
That's great. Well, it was lovely. I didn't get to meet you that night because I was busy flying around.
Imagine that. You busy on that night.
Well, I was a little bit.
Yeah. There were a lot of people busy. They did well.
So those are the official capacities. Now what about sort of the things that are not, what is it, other duties as assigned or as a rise? What's that?
Well, that's changed dramatically over the years. Of course, when I first came on board, I was asked to be a chaplain in 1993, before amalgamation.
Oh yes.
And
so I'm just going to cut in there, because if it was before amalgamation, so then you were basically
City of Ottawa.
Your turf was the City of Ottawa, right?
And one of the big first hurdles I came to was being recognized or noticed by the Nepean and the Gloucester and the other groups as they came on.
There were some growing pains.
Yeah, but it was a funny situation when I was brought on, because at that point the City of Ottawa wasn't really interested in doing the chaplain thing. And I think that there's a lot of political pull to get away from denominational bounds and of course the interfaith questions and all those sorts of things. Now the role of a chaplain is not to promote religion, it's actually to be present, a ministry of presence to people at certain times in their life. So I don't do a lot of evangelizing on the fire rigs. I wouldn't be invited into the firehouses if I did. And I've had the great opportunity to do, a number of ride-arounds through the years, and it's in the informal conversations. I did a lot of work in the beginning with people that didn't know the resources that were available to them in the community, addiction, domestic violence, that sort of thing. I was seen as a safe person because I didn't report to anybody. So I did a lot of referrals, a lot of mental health issues. And
that is a terrific service.
Oh, it's fabulous.
It's a terrific service. I mean, people are at their lowest points and nowhere else to turn. And what an awesome service to provide.
Well, and it's a funny thing because, like I said, it's that safe question. And of course, the firefighters nowadays have a great deal of resources that they can go to when they're dealing with issues, as we all deal with issues in our life. And so some of that is just making it known to them or pointing them in a specific direction. But I'm outside the chain of command. So I am not responsible to tell anyone or do anything about it.
You're there for them.
Yep.
That's,
solely.
Yeah, that's terrific. So what I'm going to be maybe a little, I'm just going to ask you in terms of, sort of a range of, in terms of the impact it has on you emotionally, or that kind of thing. Like, I'm sure you've seen some situations that are very troubling to some that are that are a little more sort of not normal, but regular run of the mill. Like, so what's kind of...
Well, in my work, we were always expected. I'm an Anglican minister. I was ordained in 1985. And the rule of thumb is 10% of your time should be a gift to the community.
Yes.
Either in working in food banks
that
or...
comes out of tithing, isn't it?
It does come out of tithing.
I know one thing.
Well, but 10% of the time that I was allocated to do other stuff, when I was asked in '93 to be a chaplain, I grew up in a military household. My dad was Air Force, 38 years, was in the war, flying Halifax bombers, and religion was always a very important thing in our life. So I knew the chaplains, and they were like nice guys. And in those days it was all guys, but so I really didn't know what to expect. But the thing that I probably am most profoundly affected by is the blessing that it has been to me in my life to serve the Ottawa Fire Department.
Yes.
They're very gracious. They thank you all the time, and they mean it. It's not a paid position, but it is, you get all the bling and that sort of thing.
You look sharp.
Well,
yeah.
Who doesn't look good in the uniform?
Yeah,
Man or woman, it doesn't matter. It looks good. Yeah, so when I was asked in '93 to become the chaplain, I had no idea what to expect, other than the fact that the bishop that ordained me, Ed Lackey, was a previous chaplain.
Okay.
And that's his helmet there, and his family gave it to me when I was asked to be chaplain after him.
It's a handsome one.
It's an old one, it's hand painted, well done.
Yeah.
What I didn't understand, well, as you can see, it is one of the nice ones. What I didn't understand is the bishop after Ed Lackey was John Baycroft. John Baycroft was asked to be the next chaplain. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, I got a guy for you. And so it was like he saw in me this quality that allowed me to do certain things that I come across as non-judgmental and that sort of thing. And I think that that's always worked well in my favor. And over the years...
I got that the minute you walked through the door.
That's the voice. It puts you at ease.
That's right.
There you go.
It's a radio voice too, right? It could be.
Well, I certainly have a face for radio, so yeah. In all of that, I have made some profound and deep friendships with firefighters, and I've come to understand and respect not only the job, but also the attitude that a lot of them bring, about serving their community. And that's what gives me life in it. So, after 30 some odd years of doing this job, I love it. And I feel totally blessed to have been asked so many years ago and to see it follow through. So
you see like a future of continuing for...
How do I say this politically correctly? I don't think religion is that important to the world anymore.
Okay.
And at one time, most of the fire department was probably religious in one way or another, and chaplains were normal.
Yeah.
Over the years, most firefighters are not religious, and so the big thing is, what does a chaplain do? Yeah. And again, my job is, in the real world, I say I'm not in management. I leave that to God. I'm in sales, inviting them in. But the salesmanship of chaplaincy is just to be present in the important moments of their life without the judgment or the, now, I do know a lot of people of faith and through that, but
sure.
So I'm not so sure they will continue on with the chaplaincy. But
okay, well, that's an interesting question, something for us to pay attention to as time goes by, right? But for the foreseeable future, you're the guy.
Yep.
That's great. And so I was thinking, and I noticed that you didn't really talk about some of the some of the issues that you might have faced, and maybe that's not appropriate for this conversation, but I think that my sense is that you must see people at very low points and have feel rewarded for being a help to them at a time when they need a hand up, not a handout.
I don't know about rewarded. I would call it more like I've been blessed to be a part of people's lives in the most difficult and the most celebratory things in their life.
Yes.
You think about, in my normal line of work, baptisms and weddings and funerals. I mean, it is the cycle of life. And with firefighters, I am very well aware of the trauma that they suffer and the attitude that they used to have of burying it. And I also see the pain that causes over the years. So if I can be a person that is present and allows them to talk, I've been in a number of bad conversations and difficult conversations, but I feel like what my bishop understood and what I understand is that I'm the type of personality that people can normally talk to about those sorts of things.
Well, that's great.
And I don't hold it on them, So
that is good. You commented about the history of burying it, and just a little two personal anecdotes. My father was a prisoner of war for the majority of the war, and he had PTSD. But he came from a time when he believed that he was sworn to secrecy. He couldn't talk about anything that happened to him.
Yep.
And as I grew older, as his child, I could see, that it was an effect that unfortunately he needed help with.
Yep.
And then when I met Maynard, he was already out of the service.
Yep.
And he was on long-term disability. And he told me lots of stories. And he also warned me that he knew that he had nightmares, that he would behave in a certain way. So anyways, all that to say, his conversation was about, he didn't believe that he should get help himself, but he always made sure his
staff got it.
Staff got it. And I just found myself thinking, he's thankfully the next generation of firefighters are not living with that kind of burden. But it's...
They still live with the burden because it's still there in the job in many different ways and with other subtleties. But within our culture, it's okay when you're ready to start talking about it.
Yes.
To start talking about
That's
it.
Good.
And I think that's the big culture shift
that's a big new chapter that took a while to open.
Yeah. It was a funny story. My dad flew Bomber Command out of York in England, and when I was 13 years old, my dad retired, and he went to school to become an Anglican minister. Mm-hmm. Okay, I was invited to go and tend bar when I was 13 years old for a meeting he was having up at our cottage. Mm-hmm. It was his flight crew, and I knew nothing about what he went through and what the crew went through and all the rest of it. Eye-opening experience. Yeah. And the one thing I will remember more than anything else was at the end of that weekend, when I had finally heard the stories and all the rest, he looked at me and said, I'm really, really pleased you're here because I couldn't tell you those things. Yeah. And the hiding or the running away from emotions or the dealing with them with either, drinking or carousing or whatever, is not a healthy way to experience it. So,
No. So thinking about this, and I'm going to confess that, not that kind of confession.
That's okay, I don't have that much time.
Okay. But I have not studied the Bible all that much, but I'm familiar with not so much wording, but like certain, certain phrases. When we got married, there were certain scriptures that we used and so on. Don't ask me to tell you what they were because
love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or rude.
Well, there we go. You know that off the top. So in your life as a fire department chaplain, do you find yourself using scripture? Are there any particular scriptures that you?
I wouldn't quote it with them.
No, okay.
There's a motto though.
But you kind of are, like, you think about them and are guided by it?
Absolutely. My favorite one. Now, I learned this one with my children.
Is this the motto, or is that a separate thing?
No, it's a mantra that is found in Scripture, right? Always be ready. Always be willing to give the reasons for the hope that lies within you when you're asked. So my understanding of the faith, if somebody asks me about my faith, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to, until the cows come home or until their ears turn off. Mm-hmm. But wait till you're asked.
Right.
And how often is that with the way we deal with our children and with the way we deal with all sorts of things, wait until that moment is right.
And when the doors open,
and when their ears are open.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I like that. Something about that resonates with me very deeply. So, now I notice, well, actually it's been pointed out to me that you have 5 stripes. This is not something I'm very knowledgeable about. 5 stripes on your sleeve.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
I have no idea.
It's very nice looking.
The one chief that told me something, I can't remember which it was. He said, no one, you don't have to salute anyone, and no one outranks you. But it's a chief's, signet. I don't know why they gave it to the chaplain, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yep.
Well, it looks good. and
it's a hoot when you go with other firefighters and
yes.
they can't see the collar because I get the chief thing all the time, so
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Now, when you say, have you ever done any fire service at all?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you have.
No, sorry, but careful what you mean by fire service.
Volunteer fire.
No. I've been to a number of fires. I remember the first fire I went to, I think Charlebois High School.
Oh my goodness.
Scared the living daylights out of me, and I realized I'm much better at praying for them than getting in their way.
And it was a real eye-opener seeing what the guys had to do, the personnel, because we have some women on the service.
Absolutely.
I know my husband spoke very fondly of a couple of them, and I actually was able to befriend a couple on Facebook, so it's nice. So what about family and ministry? Tell me about that.
I have 4 wonderful children.
Are they all?
3 of them are in Ottawa. Well, one is in Carleton Place, and one of them is down in Guelph. Mm-hmm. So I have 8 grandchildren, and that's why I retired 2 years ago to sort out the priorities of my life in that sort of way. But I didn't give up being chaplain. So
yeah. And what are you? But you retired from the diocese. So does that mean you pulled back from that kind of ministry?
No, I still do funerals for whoever asks, and I do a lot of firefighter funerals.
Yes.
Quite a few.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I was at Maynard's. It was in Winchester.
No.
No.
You're thinking of a different Maynard.
Oh, okay.
There were 3 Maynards in the fire department. The most unusual name I had ever heard. Like when I met him, I was like, I didn't know how to pronounce it, and then I find out later there were 2 other Maynards in service prior to him. Like one of them retired sometime during the time that he was in the service, but no, it was a different Maynard.
Okay, yeah. I apologize for that.
That's okay. I know you weren't the minister because it was a woman.
I've been accused of a lot of things, but not that one.
So you've resolved the family, the dichotomy of the struggle, and
I also help out next Sunday, not this Sunday. The next Sunday, I'm serving in Smith Falls for about 9 Sundays in a row. So help out there. I was at Trinity Church on Bank Street for 3-4 months, and I was over in Elmer for 2.5 months, so I'll do fill-in, I'll help out.
Right.
I don't want a full-time job.
Okay. You don't want a full-time job, okay. Oh, well. I don't have one for you, but A minute ago, I shared with you sort of a recent, very moving experience that I had talking to somebody who was in a difficult situation. And I saw something go over your face and you nodded. And I wondered if you have any, like maybe not a particular specific instance, but talking about that thing that you can't, you can't put it in a I'm
Yep.
going to stop, let you talk, because I think you have something you want to mention.
It's the context, the contact that sort of hit me at that point was, we're all broken. There's stuff wrong with all of us.
Yeah.
And when bad things happen, death, sickness, spouses dying, I have the privilege of being with people and offering a hand, just a step up or a move forward. And what gets me every time, it's the little stuff that I'm not even paying attention to. Mm-hmm. I'd love to tell you all the big stories,
Yes.
But it's not. It's the little stories when nothing was going right in this person's life and they just came and asked a question and they come back 5 years later and say, I gotta tell you, when you answered that question and you said this, it meant the world to me. I don't remember it.
Yeah.
But that's part of also what I believe about humanity. God gives me, in my line of work, in my duty, as a chaplain, as a parish priest, as a husband, as a dad, the opportunity to do the right thing.
Yes.
And because of the role that I play in the chaplaincy, there's a number of them. Big, rugged, tough firefighters whose husband or whose wife is sick. Mm-hmm. And the conversation you have with them is a blessing, Yeah. I know a number of firefighters with PTSD. I know a number of firefighters, and the little things that you say to them or whatever brings them about to taking the next step. It's not the big stuff. It really is the little tiny stuff that you do that shows that you care. And the role of the chaplain, as I see it, now there's chaplains that will tell you differently, and they will for sure. But the role of the chaplain isn't to do, it's to be. And that's why I talk about it very seriously about being present. Well, being present in people's lives is such a gift when you look at it retrospectively. Now, there's also some great times, just wonderful, wonderful times. A terrible fire killed 2 firefighters down, volunteer firefighters, and was asked to go and represent the Ottawa Fire Department and got on a bus. It was an amazing trip, because they all knew why they were going. We were all focused on the same thing. And yet the care that they had for each other and the joviality of being together was exactly the medicine that they needed. Yes. To deal with the loss of those 2 firefighters.
Yes.
So.
Yes, I hear that. I hear it and I see it in your eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. In our conversation and my awareness that you began in 1993, and here we are 2022, late in 2022,
yeah.
You did comment about, there's a diversity amongst the firefighting community, firefighters.
Yeah.
Based on a whole variety of criteria. Some of it is religion, some of it is there's, now women serving. So diversity is increasing. I'm wondering, in terms of the work that you do and the conversations you have, how much of a change has that been?
I think it was a dramatic change. I probably didn't tell you, but when I was first brought on in '93, there was a small fight about, we don't need another Christian chaplain sort of idea. And again, the politicians are very nervous because we're labeled as Christian. The world in which we live in Ottawa is so diversified right now, and has been way more diversified in the last 27 years or 28 years that I've served. And I think that makes the community stronger, and the role much more, again, not, being present, not being, I'm not there to tell people what to believe or how to believe it. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever had that conversation with a firefighter. I'm happy that it's not that. But it is part of the culture that we grew up in to serve, you know, our society recognizes firefighters as these little wonderful angels. Well, it's one of the ways that we pay back that community by serving them as much as we can in how we do things. And I'm very lucky to have that role. Is it different? Well, you know, the diversity is huge, and it's going to keep going. But wow, some of that diversity has really strengthened our service and strengthened our community, and brought us into a place where I think the men and women of the Ottawa Fire Services today beginning more and more to reflect the world in which we come. They reflect Ottawa, yes. and that's awesome.
And that makes sense.
Yeah,
right? That makes sense.
It does. Now, always with change, we're going to have that 10% saying, whoa, 10% saying, come on, and the 80% just figuring it out. Well, I'm part of the 80% that just needs to go forward, but I need to go slow enough, that's all.
And recognizing there's sometimes a dichotomy and being sensitive to it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's an enriching aspect, I think.
Very much so.
That's a sense I get from you, that it's been enriching for you.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it just popped into my head. Has that changed conversations you have with your children and your grandchildren? Is that?
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, the best part is when they try to on my bunker suit, you know. my grandchildren are all 8 and under, so
okay,
you know, the boots, they get in the boots and they're gone.
They disappear, right?
Yeah. But
that must be very cute.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, I would say that for the longest time, my work as a chaplain was a wonderful field of opportunity for my preaching every Sunday in my regular church, you know, because of the role that you get and that observation of the world as it changes, and you know, some people in church don't want change either, right? You know, so you sort of talk about it as one experience highlighting the other. So,
and I'm sure your parishioners must feel like, you know, he kind of gets it, right? So.
Yeah, they also like the fact that I work with the fire department, especially when I was down at St. Luke's on Somerset. Around the corner was number 3, and you know, there was the union meetings used to be in the old St. Luke's Church Hall, and so they felt very connected to that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Well, that's very. I'm envious, actually, of some of the experiences you've had to have. I mean, that's a wonderful career to have had. Well, it's just can't call it a career because it's not a paid occupation, right?
Yeah, call it a vocation.
Vocation. I like that very much.
Yeah.
So it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Well, it has been my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity, and also thank you for all the wonderful work you do with the brigade. That's awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you. I kind of wrapped it up and said my thank yous, but it turns out you have a story inside that you would like to share with everybody. Apparently you could go on for a while, so how about we give you the opportunity to share with us a story that comes to mind.
Absolutely. So, 93, I told you that they asked my new bishop to consider the job as chaplain, and he said, no, you got to go talk to this fellow John Bridges and he'll. Now, the city didn't want chaplains, so I wasn't being talked to by the city. It was the union guys. Now, I knew nothing about the union, the city. All I knew was there was a big fight coming up about how many people to man a ladder truck or something, and politicians were telling me what I should think, and union people were telling me.
Right.
And so I realized that, you know, so I was a little leery going into this meeting because I knew nothing about being a chaplain, and sit down with these union guys, and they asked me a bunch of questions. I said, let me get this right. this is a volunteer job and I have to go through an interview to get a volunteer job? And they said, well, no, we just need to know whether you're going to be okay. So they asked the 6 or 7 questions, and then a firefighter, will go nameless, who was on the union at that time, told one of the rudest jokes I've ever heard. It was bad. Mm-hmm. Now, I worked in construction in my teenage years, and I've heard some bad jokes, but it was pretty bad. And I looked at him, I said, that was rude, but it was funny, but that was rude. And all of a sudden he looked at me and said, you're hired. And I understood that if I had been shocked, I would have been in trouble. If I had been moralizing, I would have been in trouble. Mm-hmm. But just being straightforward and honest, mm-hmm. and, can you say stuff that's not absolutely perfectly politically correct in front of the chaplain? Yeah, I guess you can. He's not going to take us down.
You passed.
Yeah.
Passed.
Now, it was also not long after that firefighter passed away.
No. Yeah.
It wasn't a nice death, and he has some people on the department now and had to deal with his wife. But it was one of the most gifting experiences of my life to be able to be there for them in a specific way, having an intimate knowledge of their dad, their husband, that sort of thing. And that also had been okay enough to be truthful around me. And so, in no uncertain terms, the last 27, 28 years have been a blessing in my life. Mm-hmm. And the men and women of the Ottawa Fire Services are dear to my heart and will continue to be, even when I'm too old to do the job anymore, because they have given me so much. And I would just want to say thanks. Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. I love that. That's great.
All right, we're done now.